candidate. You will not be on your ballot on May 5th. You're still trying to secure ballot access for November, is that correct? All right, very good. So once again, I want to reiterate the rules. We've got 4 minutes each for our candidates to give an opening statement. And then once we get to our questions, we've got 90 seconds. And I especially expect maybe a little bit more jostling in this section with the 4 of you there. So if somebody is mentioned directly by name, I'll give you 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Folks, if our QR code is still out there. So if you want to ask some questions from the audience, just scan that and submit your questions there. We do have some already in the hopper from our Bloomington DSA chapter and our co-sponsors. But for now, let us go ahead and start. And I'm going to go directly from left to right here. And I'm going to start with Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, you've got 4 minutes for an opening statement.
Good evening. I'm the independent candidate in this race, and I want to get right to the point. I have Republicans that are calling me a closet Democrat and Democrats that are calling me a closet Republican. And both sides are saying I'm trying to split the vote. And I just want to state right up front that I'm not trying to split the vote. I want to take it all. I want it all. The truth is, I'm not in this campaign. The truth is, this campaign isn't a protest, it's a war against the government. And I run a weapon. It's called the Congress app. With the Congress app, when a bill comes up for a vote, you get text on your phone. You get to read the full bill text, the plain English summary, and fiscal impact. And then you vote yes or no. Then my vote is bound to the will of the people of the 9th District. Not just the registered voters, all the people. And that simple tool changes everything. Lobbyists and PACs can't buy my vote. They have to persuade you. Money no longer flows to Washington to buy access. It has to flow right here into your communities to earn your trust. We can finally tackle the issues that no one dares to touch, not because they're unpopular, but because they're unpopular with the big donors of the party leadership. Every other campaign starts with a candidate's platform, their ideas, their goals, their concepts of a plan. My campaign starts with your positions, your ideas, your goals, and writes the bills to make the law. I'm not asking for your trust, I'm designing for it. And I'm the only one that running on a plan that turns your phone into a weapon against the voting system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, 4 minutes for an opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I want to send my deepest condolences and prayers for those service members that have lost their lives in the Middle East in Iran bombing. Secondly, I just want to say my name is Keil Roark, and I'm running in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. I believe that government should work for the people. I am an electrical engineer, father of 4, veteran. I am running for Congress because we have an affordability crisis. I am looking to put more money in people's pockets, bottom line, okay? I'm also working to provide affordable housing, increase wages, but I'm also running to advance educational opportunities for our students, either in college, university, or in tech schools that grant wide accessibility and affordability. And finally, I'm also running for government accountability. Okay? Congress has oversight responsibilities to which they're designed for. And I'm also running to return decency to Washington, if that's possible. I also believe in honor, courage, and commitment, and I believe I'm the man to provide that, make that happen. Okay. Of all of us up here today, I believe I am the only one that can beat Aaron Halchin. I'm the only one who put himself through college working on the assembly line at Chrysler as a UAW worker. And I'm the only one who swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So I appreciate your vote and your support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, you may take up to 4 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Thank you to the DSA. Thank you to all the co-sponsors, to my competitors here tonight. I appreciate it, to the audience. My name is Dr. Tim Peck. I am an emergency physician down in rural southern Indiana. My father was a Vietnam veteran who came home and dedicated his life to building the first homeless shelter for veterans in the United States, and that's how I grew up. I became chief resident as a physician in emergency medicine at Harvard Med School and left to live in a nursing home for 3 months. And there, I learned everything I could about that world in order to bring them a new care model, which was telemedicine, before telemedicine was a reality. That turned into a very large physician practice in which we treated hundreds of thousands of patients across the country. And we saved Medicare and taxpayers $100 million. And what that did is lead me to DC. And there I became a leader of a bipartisan coalition that got Congress to pass multiple bills and make telemedicine a reality right before the pandemic, saving the lives of millions of people. So now I live on a farm with my wife and my son, and treating my rural neighbors. So I wanted to quickly tell you about what I've been thinking about, which is Alex Preddy, and what it means to have border control and ICE on our streets, and that, for ICE to act constitutionally, it does not need to sow unnecessary terror. It needs to be dedicated to the honor of the Constitution, the nation, its people, and definitely not its parties, not its leaders' whims or late night tweets, and not its billionaires putting its money into their pockets, or our politicians' pockets. And so reflecting on Alex's death, it reminds me of the people I see in the emergency department who just want to be safe. They just want to feel seen. They just want to get home to the people they love, just like Alex did right before he had pepper spray in his face, 5 men on his back, one with his own gun in their hand, and right before 11 bullets were put into his body. Alex's death shows us that what's happening in America is not working today. We need a new way forward. Isn't it exhausting to live this way? Does anyone actually like being this way? Is this the America that you all dreamed of? We have to stop putting our energy into hate and otherness and redirect it into patience and curiosity and community. And if our leaders aren't willing to do that, then let's do that ourselves. Because after we hold power to account, and we will, the next step will be the hard work of bringing people together, of lifting up the safety glass of social media, taking down the cage of 24-hour news networks, and making a democracy that works for all of us. The opportunity of this election is not about politics. The opportunity of this election is about humanity, and remembering that all people deserve dignity, no matter who they are and where they are from. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, you've got up to 4 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. This is a great turnout, and I would like to thank the DSA for hosting this. So I'm Brad Meyer. I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives because this system that we live in truly is rigged. And I did want to rebut. I also swore an oath to the Constitution to protect it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that's part of why I left my job to run for office. I also put myself through school. My wife and I got married when we turned 18 and went to college together. I spent 25 years in industry, and this is really not about me, it's about you, right? So my time in industry, I saw ethical leadership where owners of the company cared about their employees and treated them fairly and with dignity. I also saw leaders that definitely did not, and their only purpose in life was to squeeze every penny out of everything and every person that worked for them. And that selfish approach is the official policy of the government today. It's been that way for a long time, but it is now the official policy and where we're going. Instead of expanding opportunity for all of us, they are hoarding opportunity and wealth and power for themselves while the rest of us struggle. Our priorities and our values are not being reflected in what our government does. For example, the government found money to add tens of billions of dollars to ICE funding, and they found enough money to give $40 billion, about $70 billion for ICE, $40 billion for tax cuts. That's actually the amount of money we need for a child care program in the United States. If we just flip those, we've got the money. They've already identified it, but they're not going to apply to our values. To change this, we're going to have to get into power. And there are three ways that people are talking about being able to do that. One of them is that we can, there's voters over here and they are conservative, and we will slide over and snuggle up next to them, and we will try to talk like them, and we'll try to get their votes. And we tried that in the last election, and it didn't work. And it's not going to work this election either. The second strategy that's being discussed is that we need to be more middle of the road, more reasonable. And that's not going to work either. The fact is that the middle of the road isn't a policy, it's just a place to get run over. I say that we have given too much ground now as it is, and we need to stand up for our democratic principles and what we believe in and start fighting for what we need as a country. People want leadership that delivers. They want things that are going to improve their lives. The path forward isn't chasing politicians and other people's ideas. The path forward is to find the people that have been underserved and cut out of our society and show them that we have better ideas and better solutions and attract them to our side. That's how we're going to win. If we want them to show up at the ballot box, we have to show up for them first with policies that make a difference. I'm fighting for universal, nonprofit, single-payer health care because no one should go broke just trying to stay alive. I'm fighting for economic policies that will put more money in people's pockets so that they can earn and have independence in their economics. If you're working 40 hours a week, you should be able to afford a house and food. And right now, that's not the case.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to go ahead and give you more questions tonight. And I'm going to remind you folks that we're going to have 90 seconds each for your answers. And then if somebody is mentioned by name, I'll give you 30 seconds for a rebuttal. I'm going to start over here with Mr. Taylor on the first question. Then I will start the second question with Mr. Roark, the third question with Dr. Peck, and so on and so forth. So for you, Mr. Taylor, this question comes from Bloomington, DSA. After seeing the recent success and popularity of socialist candidates like Zoran Mamdani in New York and Senator Bernie Sanders, both locally and nationally, would you work with and advocate for some socialist positions and policies while in office? And you've got 90 seconds.
Well, I will advocate for whatever the people want me to advocate for. I use the Congress app, they tell me what to do, I do it. I don't need a personal position of my own. If they want socialists in office, they get socialists in office. If they want socialist policies, they get socialist policies. Other than that, it's pretty much up to the people how it goes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, 90 seconds for you, sir.
Excellent, thank you. So first step is ACA subsidies. I would advocate strongly to reinstitute ACA subsidies. Okay, obviously they expired. We're seeing across the board in the 9th congressional district on average 25 to 30% increase in premiums. So I would advocate strongly to reinstitute those. Also, a billionaire tax. Our billionaire friends have been living large on the tax code for 25 years now, and they've been profiting from it. There's major inequalities between the middle class, the millionaire class, and the billionaire class. And then obviously I would advocate for those policies. And then secondly, I just wanted to make one point clear. I swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. My oath is clearly different than Bradley's. I was in the military, he was not, just to make a point. Thank you.
Well, before I get to you, Dr. Peck, I'm going to give 30 seconds to Mr. Meyer to rebut that.
I was not a uniformed officer in the Navy. I was a civilian employee in the Navy. I worked on systems that protected ships from missile attack. Same oath.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Peck, back to you for 90 seconds, and I will reiterate, the question is whether you would advocate and support some socialist positions and policy while in office.
Housing subsidies are an enormous part. So we're sitting here in Bloomington where there's been recent national attention to the housing shortage that we have, but that's everywhere throughout India. A 30-year-old nurse who graduated 10 years ago from school can't afford a home where their mother and father could afford a home and their grandparents could afford a home. That's backwards. And so we need to do something to level the playing field and supporting people to get into housing instead of certainly first-time housing is something that I'm advocating for. Union rights, worker rights, being able to restore collective bargaining across the entire country is another piece. And then we talked about it, the billionaire tax just makes sense. Billionaires do not pay their fair share of taxes. The tax loopholes can be closed, and we would be able to solve a lot of the issues that we have in this country if only we had more revenue from the people who take revenue from us. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. And finally, Mr. Meyer, 90 seconds on what, if any, socialist policies you would advocate for while in Congress.
So again, I'm advocating for universal, nonprofit, single-payer healthcare. Okay, I want to be very clear about that. And if you need to understand what the difference in the candidates are, ask them about single payer. That is the difference, I believe, between. I've struggled, frankly. I've gotten some questions in the past about what should we do about daycare. And the thing that I struggled with, frankly, is that how do we pay for it? It's going through the numbers, and like I said, the Republicans have found the money. They just applied it to things that were important to them instead of important to us. We just need to reappropriate that money. I'm a strong advocate for unions. I have been behind closed doors with management. I know why unions are important. Unions represent about a 25 to 30% increase in earnings. And these right to work are really right to work for less laws. And they are trying to push all of earnings down, suppresses earnings for union and non-union workers. And there are a lot of housing policies that work in the 50s and 60s and early 70s that help to keep housing prices fair and level, and they need to be restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Since you mentioned it, I actually want to go ahead and dig into healthcare a little bit. You mentioned you support single-payer, universal healthcare, Medicare for all, if you want to call it that. And I'm going to come to Mr. Roark and ask what your positions are on single-payer healthcare. Is that something you would support? 90 seconds.
So my position is, I'm in favor of private healthcare, but with the ability for universal healthcare as a supplement for those low-income families of 250% above the poverty line, which on average is about 78,000. Kentucky, Maryland have a similar policy, and it works very effective because it supplements the existing private healthcare policy. So that's my position. And then also, with that plan, with the private healthcare and the limited, universal policy, you have the best of both worlds. You have the ability of choice, because I think that's one of the difficulties with universal healthcare is choice. You want to be able to go to the doctor, keep your doctor. You don't want to go to a doctor you're not used to going to. That's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, what are your position on single-payer universal healthcare?
Personally, everyone deserves healthcare. It's a human right. I'm part of the AMA, which says right on their front page, it's a human right. It's not a constitutional right now. And that's the struggle that we have in this country, which means that there's real work that needs to get done to get there. Single payer, Medicare for all, is one way of doing that. That way is not a reality that we can get done in the next 2 years, or even the next 4 years, or maybe further than that. So what's the hard work that has to happen? And the hard work that I've done and will continue to do with all of your support. We need costs to be down from where they are right now. We cannot pay for our healthcare as it is. Medicaid does not cover the cost of care. Medicare does not cover the full cost of care. I live in a healthcare desert. I live in rural Clark County where my local hospital is closed. I have to drive past it to get to my hospital where I work. The 911 system is in shambles, and that's because 20 to 30% of the people who walk through that door do not have insurance. We need a public option tomorrow. We need to be able to pay it, and I'm sure we'll talk more about how we can take cost out of the system. And I'd love to tell you about it in our next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, you brought up this position, so I want to come back to you. We see where you stand on single payer healthcare, but you've got 90 seconds to elaborate.
Thank you. So the first thing that we have to do, and I mean right now, is to stabilize hospital and provider pay. We're seeing hospitals close, we're seeing services be cut back. Something has to be done immediately in days and weeks, not weeks and months. This is a healthcare crisis and it has to be addressed. Medium term, we need universal, nonprofit, single payer healthcare. The UK implemented their system in 6 years. In the first 3 years, they were fighting the Germans. They really did it in 3 years. We implemented Medicare in 1 year using 3x5 index cards. Surely we can do this in 3 years. And that is the plan that has been put forward. It is achievable. It is the only thing that's holding us back is all this talk about we can't do it, wringing our hands and saying it's just too complicated. Every other country has already done it. There are answers and solutions. We have to stop worrying about can't we, shall we. These half measures are never going to work. We put a half measure in place with the ACA, and then they spent a decade undercutting and undermining and trying 100 times in the House and 60 times in the Senate to kill it. You want to put a half measure in place? It's not going to work. The long-term answer is a constitutional amendment that gives it a guarantee, and you can see that on my website.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, 90 seconds, your position on Medicare for all.
Well, I've actually written legislation, draft legislation, you can read it on the website. It gives everybody health care by default. There is no more uninsured people. There's both the government funded healthcare and there's private funded healthcare. You can have insurance, you can not have insurance, but there are no more uninsured people. You don't get denied coverage, you don't get denied anything, and most everything is covered, and it costs less. I mean, it costs less than the ACA, and it is easy to do. I mean, the legislation was simple. I wrote it, it's there, it works, the financial breakdowns on my website. You can go to read the bill today, and it's a solution to the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So I want to come to Dr. Peck to begin this next segment. And this is a question from Bloomington DSA, and it is about Israel. And it's a very sticky subject for many folks. So given that the U.S. was an active participant and enabler of Israel's genocide in Gaza, many Americans, DSA especially, are in favor of ending all military, political, and economic support to Israel in response to its flagrant violations of international law. However, most congressional Democrats in Washington are wildly out of step with the American public and the international consensus and pledge unconditional support to Israel. What are your views on Israel? Have they shifted during the genocide of the Palestinians? How do you plan to fight back against the establishment and work toward ending our participation in genocide and apartheid? And can you even agree with the statements that I just mentioned, that Israel is committing genocide and is an apartheid state? That's a lot, but you got 90 seconds.
Thank you. We're laughing, but this is not a laughing matter. People are dying. Innocent people have died and will continue to die because we're giving weapons to an ally that is not using them responsibly. We need to hold them accountable. We have the purse strings. We have the weapons ourselves. And we need Israel as a partner, but we don't need a partner that indiscriminately sends bombs into children. And so we have the power to say, we're not giving you weapons unless you use those weapons responsibly. And that includes in Iran as well, with what we've just seen. Words matter to many people, and genocide, I know, is a word that matters to many people in this room as DSA members and as Americans. And I do believe that the definition of genocide, of some people's definition of genocide, has been met by Israel's actions. And I do believe that we'll see an international court that we are in play right now with Israel tell us if this truly is genocide or not. And we'll go with what they say if this is if it's a fair trial, which I'm sure it will be. And so, yes, I'm willing to say the word genocide. And thank you for this question, because it's extremely important.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, 90 seconds.
So the videos and the pictures of what's happening in Palestine is just gut-wrenching. And we, the United States, our position needs to be that there needs to be a long-term durable peace. And the only way that I believe that is possible is with a two-state solution. And we need to be advocating, pushing for a two-state solution, and we need to be working to bring our ally Israel to the table on that. And we need to be very thoughtful about what support we're giving to Israel. And Biden actually tried to pull back a little bit of support, and even a very small pullback of support to try to bring our allies to get their attention, was wildly unpopular. In some cases because people felt that it was too weak, and in other people that anything except 100% support for Israel is not acceptable. We have to act in our interest and in alignment with our values, and we really need to be applying pressure to Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, we get 90 seconds on your thoughts on Israel and whether it committed a genocide and is an apartheid state.
Well, this is one of the things that I would put up for the Congress at, and I would do something like this. Everybody in this room who believes that it's an apartheid state and we should end our relationship with it, raise your hand. Okay, the Congress Act says that I think it's an apartheid state and we should end our relationship with it.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And finally, Mr. Roark, to you.
Yeah, I believe that I'm a supporter of Israel, but I'm also a supporter of having a peace agreement. I want peace in the region. I want us to work with Israel to develop peace. And I want to be able to provide support for that peace agreement. And if armaments are needed to do that, I'm willing to do that. But we need to continue to work through peace. Israel's been our ally in that region for some time now, right? And for whatever reason, they keep having, we keep struggling with this, right? So I just want to reaffirm my support for Israel and the relationship we have with them. And I do agree with the two-state solution. I think that's the best way forward. And that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. I'm going to put a quick audible right here and just ask a sort of show of hands. The United States is currently not a party to the Rome Statute that established the International Criminal Court, the organization that could hold Israel accountable. So show of hands, would you agree with maintaining that position of keeping the U.S. out of the International Criminal Court? All right, that was like 4 votes. All right. Thank you. So this next one is to Mr. Meyer to begin with, and the question is from Mask Block Bloomington. Public health guidance has often prioritized political convenience over accuracy. How would you use congressional oversight to respond when federal agencies or officials disseminate misleading or politically motivated public health guidance?
So this is exactly why I said in the long run, we have to have a constitutional amendment on public health, that it is a constitutional right, because we have more leverage. If it's a constitutional right and they are undercutting the information and the systems and the services, then that is more actionable. And we have seen in this government, in particular, that they can lie and undercut, and then every once in a while, they bump up against the Constitution. And that is the only thing that is going to protect us for our healthcare. Otherwise, they're going to undercut and undermine and destroy anything and any progress we make, and they are going to misinform.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, how would you respond to federal agencies that disseminate misleading or politically motivated public health guidance?
Well, I've spent some time working in the government, and I would treat it like I would treat anybody else who gave false information in a government job. You're fired. That's it. End of story. Terminate there. That's all.
Okay, well, I guess, and if I may follow up, since we didn't use heck of a lot of time there, these folks are largely appointed by the president. How can you, as Congress, hold them accountable when you don't necessarily have the power to fire folks like, say, RFK Jr.?
Maybe Congress should have the power to fire folks like RFK Jr. We could publicly cite him and tell everybody that he is spinning yarns, so to speak. But I'm for the firing squad aspect of it. I'd rather get them out of there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, I want to come to you on what the Congress should be doing about government agencies spreading misleading and false politically motivated medical information.
Yeah, so obviously you want to have congressional oversight, right? So you want to have congressional oversight with RFK Jr. and staff, but at the same time, you also have to have subject matter experts, virologists and such there to support what they're saying, trust but verify. And if you're from the great state of Indiana, you need to have folks from the state government who are or SMEs, subject matter experts in the medical field, who back up what they're saying relative to the data they're providing. Unfortunately, that's where we're at in society. We're getting a lot of misinformation from HHS, and we need to trust but verify on every turn from now on, unfortunately. And from a congressional perspective, we also need to vet appointments to that department a little bit more closely, right? We vetted RFK Jr., but we also need to vet the undersecretary and all the respective appointments and making sure that they're not misinformation type folks, right? That we have doctors who verify data that is accurate and it can be trusted. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, I suspect this one's in your wheelhouse.
Yes, the government does not belong in my exam room. And that comes to women's rights, that comes to trans rights, that comes to anybody's rights. And the way that we've done public health for so long is that the academic societies that I'm a member of put together guidelines, and then the government has these in-betweens of people who are physicians and scientists and public health experts that are hired by the government to make up national guidelines to follow, of which when I don't know what to do, I go onto the national guidelines and I look at them. Now when I look at them, I go, well, I'm not doing that. And so what I do is go back to the academic societies that put these guidelines together. And that's what we're doing as a physician community right now. And that should be the way, actually, when you think about it, for all of our medical decisions. Medical decisions are between the physician or provider, between their patient, especially a woman in some situation making an impossible choice, and their family and their faith. The government has no role in that.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. So, I'm going to start this next one. I think we're back to Mr. Taylor here. So this question comes from the Monroe County Education Association. Indiana has experienced a shortage of qualified teachers, especially in the STEM fields, for many years now. This situation has been especially difficult for rural districts and for districts in less affluent areas. What can you do from Washington that would improve this situation?
Well, I actually wrote a bill to improve, it's an education reform bill. I call it Make America Smart Again. And it funds teachers, rural classrooms, rural education. It funds, makes sure that everybody has the same funding, gets the same education, gets quality education, and gets it on the government's dime. I mean, nobody should have to fight for education. And that's just the bottom line.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, what can Washington do to stem this, tide of teachers, especially STEM teachers, flowing out of Indiana, or just getting folks in here in the first place?
Pay them more. It's that simple. I mean, the reality is, right, you got folks, chemists, engineers, electrical engineers, mathematics, right? Most of the facts, math folks, they go into actuarial sciences, not most, but some. You got engineers, you got chemists, they all make well over 100,000 a year. You're not going to get some of those folks into the classroom to ask them to take a $60,000 pay cut, $50,000 pay cut. It's just not going to happen. But they're some of the brightest people I know. So what we have to do is simply pay them more. Maybe they get a designation, right? They have their degree. We need to pay them more, but we need to improve the licensing process a little. We need to improve the licensing process as well, because there's a lot of barriers to entry there as well. You got to take the praxis. There's a lot of barriers to entry there as well. So we need to look at improving those processes, make them more efficient, making it easier, but at the same time, we need to also look at loan forgiveness, right? Folks who go, to Purdue or Rose-Hulman, they get an engineering degree. Most of them have debt. So we got to look at loan forgiveness. Hey, you come work in the school system for 5 or 10 years, we'll pay off your loan. So that's another attractive feature. Instead of pay compensation, it's just another benefit to help get rid of that debt. So those are my solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, what do we do about the teacher shortage, and can we do anything about it from Washington?
Can you just give me the full question again?
Absolutely. So Indiana has experienced a shortage of qualified teachers, particularly in the STEM fields for many years now. And this situation is especially difficult for rural districts and districts in less affluent areas. What policies would you propose to improve this situation?
And I do live in a rural district. Washington high schools struggling to get people in there to teach. Some of the local high schools around us are looking to close. It's a real problem that affects my family and people around me. Government money comes from the Department of Education. It's been cut, but it is there. And just as many in this room might be familiar with the PRO Act, which is something that essentially says if you have government money coming into infrastructure, that money should only go to companies that meet the standard and quality of payment to their employees, of conditions to their employees that a union would meet. Doesn't mean you have to be a union shop, but you have to be as good as a union shop. We can do the same thing with the money from the Department of Education. We're not giving you the money until you, as a district, as a state, get your payment rates up and start to pay people what they're actually worth. In the very short amount of time I have, I think that as well, schooling for teachers should be next to free, if not free, and we can fund that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, can I just ask you to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. So the question included the caveat, what would you do from the federal position? And the vast majority of policy, like 90 to 95% of policy, actually comes from the states. So there's a lot of things that can be and should be done from the state, and paying the teachers more is something that's going to have to be addressed at the state level. And the way we currently fund that is not going to be popular. That's a state problem that has to be addressed. Teaching is a very difficult job. About 50% of people that start out in teaching leave, I think, within the first 5 years. So there's a lot of retention problems that also need to be addressed through the state. But one of the issues that we have when you talk about what can the federal government do, the role of the federal government constitutionally is limited. And the Department of Education, one of their primary responsibilities that they are able to support is by giving good information about what's really happening in school effectiveness. So when local politicians want to privatize the state schools and it's not working well, the only way they can do that is by gutting the Department of Education, so you won't have an independent review of what's really going on in your school systems. And then you have to go to them, and of course, they're going to tell you it's working, right? So the gutting of the Department of Education is a serious problem, and it needs to be refunded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. A couple of you mentioned student loans sort of in passing during your last answer, and yeah, I want to follow up and stay on this education question in that regard. You know, during former President Biden's administration, he attempted to forgive vast amounts of student loans, ran into some problems with the Supreme Court. I think many of us as socialists don't even believe that such a thing as student loans should exist, and we should have universally funded higher education as well. So I want to start with Mr. Roark and you to elaborate a little bit on your stance on how we should be paying for higher education as a society.
I tend to believe, I got a student loan when I went to college, low interest student loan. It helped me through college. I still believe student loans, I think it really needs, with how things changed in the last 30 to 40 years, I think student loans need to be pared back relative to what field you're going into. AI has changed the landscape quite a bit. And so folks who actually want to go into school for, let's say, for example, a music degree versus folks who want to go into school for electrical engineering. So obviously those outcomes are grossly different in terms of incomes. So they need to be commensurate with the plausibility of outcomes relative to employment, right? So it's well known if you go into and you get a computer science degree versus an engineering degree, you're going to make a lot more money coming out of college, right? So therefore, you should have a higher likelihood, or those loan terms should be much better. If you're pursuing a degree that has lower income, maybe you need to reconsider, that loan, because it's not going to pay off, right? It's not going to pay back. So that's kind of my position. But in critical need areas, I will say this, in critical need areas. So obviously we talked about doctor shortage. We also talked about skilled trades. We need to really consider the free education for those fields that are critical need.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, student loans, what are we doing?
I think Biden and the Democrats made a mistake on how they went about it by trying to use the executive branch and executive powers. Congress sets the rates for student loans. Congress sets the rates for student loans. We could set a 0% rate or prime rate or under prime rate. It's a very easy fix to make these loans more affordable. Now, can we go further than that? There's a lot of resistance on the right to do so. But what can we do today is set rates that actually make sense and aren't usury. I myself have experienced this. I paid $540,000 for all of my education that I've done. That's ridiculous. And I'm still paying it back. And the reason I'm paying it back is because of the interest rate. Because I am always behind because of that interest rate. And I know there are so many other people in this room that struggle with getting their finances, getting paid the money that you need to pay your loans, not to mention all of your other costs beyond what I experience. It's an easy fix if we have Congress just lower that rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, how should we be paying for higher education in society?
So let's start with what is in the best interest of our society. Education is a great benefit, and there's been an attack on education. Since 1970, the cost of education, a college education, has gone up in today's dollars by a factor of 10. Okay? This is not an accidental thing. This is an intentional attempt to restore what we had in the quote-unquote good old days when education was for the wealthy. And we've got to get past that. We've got to look past, how do we take around the edges and how do we minimize, the interest rate and say, what do we want as a society? What is in the best interest of society? We need to start funding education like we fund roads and bridges and water treatment plants. It is a core part of our future and our infrastructure. And one of the struggles that people have is that when you get into college, some people get into college, they go for a year, they struggle, they end up with debt, and then they carry that debt and they get out and then they have the debt and they don't have the benefit of the education, right? So the first year of college education for qualified people should be free, okay? And then we need to restore, at the state level, the state has cut from about 75 to 80% of the funding that used to be for the universities. It's now down to like 30%. This is why we have to have loans, because the states and the government's not paying for education like it used to.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, I believe that you are the last one on the student loan question.
Well, when I get a student loan, it was like an $800 student loan for books. I paid on it for 5 years. Okay, that is not acceptable. Beyond that, I've written an education reform bill. It doesn't address higher education, but I'm gonna pull the Congress out trick and say, how many people here believe us that I should write a bill that makes higher education free? Looks like we got a majority. I think I can write a bill that will make higher education free for all the people who want it. I'll write it tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor. So I believe we start this next section with Dr. Peck, and this question comes from Bloomington DSA. So a recent Marist poll showed that 65% of Americans believe that ICE has gone too far, and there have been recent calls to abolish ICE. Do you believe immigration and customs enforcement can be reformed, or must it be abolished? What are your thoughts? You've got 30 seconds.
I think it can be reformed, and it's going to need a lot of reform. The first piece is to restore funding to Homeland Security, to ICE, to pre-Trump levels. That's easy. We just infused so much cash into ICE, and what are they going to do with it? They have to spend it. We had a government shutdown, and they didn't care because they have so much cash and they're so flush. So we need to go back to that. Second is fire Kristi Noem, and I don't know if anyone else is looking at their phone. It looks like she might be getting fired. She already got fired. Raise your fist for that. And then thirdly is to make ICE work like any other police force that we have in this country, which means body cameras, which means no masks, which means just the basic pieces of law enforcement, such as training that puts you out on the street in a responsible way, but even more so, making it so that you can have, that you need a warrant to actually arrest and detain citizens, residents, and otherwise. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, I suspect most of us are going to agree that it's going to take more than deposing Ms. Noam to reform that organization. What do you think we should do with ICE?
So expressions of outrage for good and pretty are justified. But the hard work that we have to do in Congress is to actually fix the problem instead of tinkering around the edges. And the core problem is that we have a log jam in what we're going to do about immigration. And I have a detailed description of what I think needs to be done with immigration. I think we need to reframe it around economics, and we need to dramatically increase legal immigration into the United States. This is the reason that we have the illegal immigration, because we make it so doggone hard to get the workers into the country that we need. It dehumanizes them, and it's disrespectful to them, and it depresses wages for all of us. We have to fix the root problem, and the root problem is that we don't have a good immigration policy that even serves our own interests. The other problem is that we have an administration that wants to use brutality to force a change. And if we get rid of ICE, if we waved the magic wand and ICE was gone tomorrow, they move that work to the FBI. We have to get in Congress, we have to hold them accountable, we have to push back, and we have to stop this brutality. Their policy, the only way to be able to implement it is through ever increasing brutality. They are not done with violence in the streets. They're going to switch people out, but they're not done.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, about what type? Yay or nay?
Kind of both. ICE used to be a nice, friendly little unit of people wearing windbreakers and carrying badges, and not the stormtroopers we see today. And there's no reason we can't return to that. But ICE should be a subset of INS. There's no reason for ICE to be out on the street unless they get a complaint from INS or the FBI. That's it. Reform them completely, but I don't think you'll ever be able to get rid of them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, finally to you on the ICE question. What should we do with this organization?
So I do not agree that we need to abolish ICE. I think that would be the wrong move, because we do have to remember ICE was developed post 9/11. Okay, they do a lot of good work to get a lot of scary people out of this country. However, I do agree they're out of control, right? They're acting like a paramilitary organization. They're not doing the right things, right? Take the mask off, body cams, judicial signed search warrants. And then we also need to look at recruiting standards. What folks are going into that organization? You know, what background checks have been done? Have they been thoroughly vetted? One positive step is they got rid of Christie. You know, that's a good move. That's about time. I kind of echo what Tim just said. I don't think that's going to change their posture, the way they do things. Going forward, as a congressional rep, we need to hold hearings to basically make sure that everybody coming into DHS is held accountable and they're thoroughly vetted. And we need to understand how they operate, change the way they do things in terms of investigative tactics, techniques, and procedures, and making sure they're doing the right thing by the American people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. This next question, we're going to start with Mr. Meyer. And, you know, we've seen this authoritarian regime, and authoritarianism thrives on always having an enemy, having an other, and immigrants That community has certainly been one of the targets of the administration's ire. The trans community has been another target. What will you do to prevent further harm to our trans neighbors and to protect your constituents from attacks like those in Kansas, where they've recently invalidated every gender-affirming driver's license that has been issued over the last several years and made them invalid effective immediately, or, for example, threats to medical care? How are you going to protect some of our most vulnerable Americans? 90 seconds.
So I try scrupulously not to agree with Dr. Peck, but I'm going to have to do it here. The government shouldn't be in a doctor's office. They shouldn't be in the decision-making process. But the decisions with trans, the patients, the family, the doctor, they're all involved in that. And I need to stay out of it. And, I guess the bottom line is that everybody has a God-given right to mind their own damn business. And I think we need to do more of that. And we need to understand, I guess, it isn't necessary that everybody in the United States understand the trans community, but they need to respect their right to live their life the way everybody else does, right? They make their choices, and we need to respect and understand that. It's not about trying to force people to live like us or think like us. It's about freedom for everybody to make their own decisions about how they want to lead their life. And we need to support that in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, now, if the folks in your Congress app don't necessarily understand the trans community and aren't quite involved there yet, and they want to bring out pitchforks, how are you still going to protect their rights?
Well, I have relatives on the, shall we say, the alternative lifestyles communities. I don't believe they should be persecuted. How I can protect them is just to not persecute them. I think we need to do a lot more of just not persecuting people. It would be really helpful.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day when your funny Uncle Bob didn't come over because his roommate wasn't liked by the family. But, we don't need to go back to those days. Those days are over, and they're over for a reason. And yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't have a good answer for it, but just no bigotry, be nice.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, from Washington, what can you do to protect our trans friends and neighbors?
So just a point of clarity, are we talking for trans under 18 or over 18?
Well, maybe you can elaborate.
Okay. So I believe from a traditional perspective, if you're under 18, I don't believe that, there should be gender affirming care under 18. I believe once you're over the 18 years of age, then if you want to transition, you're more welcome to do that. And at that particular point in time, I'd be more than happy to understand that individual's issue and try to support them in any way I could. But if you're under 18 and you're in high school and you have a trans issue relative to transition, I would want them to wait till at least they're 18 years old and, they're leading their life before, I can support, in terms of their transition. But in terms of a public policy, as a human, I would just want to sit down and try to understand what's going on with them, right? And support them in any way I could. Whether it's a healthcare issue, an employment issue, I would do whatever I can to help them, because that's just kind of the person I am, and that's the leader I will be. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, this is a human rights question, but in many ways, it's also a medical question. How are you going to protect trans rights in Washington?
I just want to, I expect so much and we've been together in so many different things. I respect you so much. Thank you for serving. Thank you for stepping up and running it. To really disagree with something that you just said there. And the fact is, you are inserting yourself, and I'm sorry to make an example of what you said, but it's a perfect example of the government trying to insert itself into a medical decision. It don't need to be decided. I have the guidelines that I would look up right here. We printed them out before this because we were getting this question. And it's so detailed. The government cannot write a bill that tells us what to do as clinicians in terms of our counseling of the patient. It just can't happen because this is going to change tomorrow when the evidence gets better. And then we'll learn other evidence and other evidence. Government shouldn't be writing these bills, and in fact, they should be writing these bills to say the government cannot insert its opinion into our healthcare decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. For one, maybe if there was nothing that Dr. Peck did you do my name?
Sure. I mean, Tim, I appreciate you. I like you, you're very respectful, but I just kind of have to disagree. If you're under 18 years old and you want to transition, I think that's irresponsible because there's so much change going on with children at those ages, and to suggest that they want to get a transition before 16 or 17, before they fully grown, I think that's irresponsible, and that flies in the face of medical history and psychology, right? I've heard many cases where folks had transitioned at 16, 17 years old, 5 years later, next thing you know, they want to transition back. So there's situations in medical history where that's actually happened. So we have to be very careful about who we're letting transition. That's why I always ask the question, let's wait till they're at least 18 before they make that call.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood. So, boy, this thing is really flying, and there are so many other things I really hope we can get a chance to talk to tonight, but we do only have time for one more question, and then we will do closing remarks. So I want to stay on this topic of bodily autonomy and whether we support adding a right to abortion to the Constitution. And that, I believe, we start this question with Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, please.
Adding it to the Constitution, I don't know. It's a healthcare thing. It's not a government thing. Government shouldn't be involved in it at all. It's a medical decision, and I would leave the medical decisions to medical professionals. I'm not one. I'm not a woman. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a god. So I'm pretty much unqualified to answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Roark, should we enshrine a person's right to their own body in the Constitution of the United States?
So, I'm a supporter of Roe, reinstating Roe. With that, obviously we have to get that work done, right? We need 67 votes, right? 2/3 of vote in the Senate and the House, so it's going to be a tall order. But I believe with those votes, I think you can do it, and I would support that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck.
I've treated a lot of women who've been raped. I've treated girls who've been raped this week. And when giving my counsel, I never once thought about what the government had to say until recently. And I still don't accept what they have to say. Again, the government does not belong in my example. In Kentucky, you have to sign a death certificate when you have a miscarriage. There are 67 votes we need to change this whole thing. But there are issues like that occur that we can make laws tomorrow if we don't have the 67 votes. If we educate the public, say how terrible that is to do to a woman and their family. And so we can make strides today while we get those 67 votes to make the change that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer?
So I think that the assertion that we need 67 votes is overly optimistic. If you look at what the Supreme Court did, they explicitly said that this has to go back to the states. They've explicitly worded it in a way that they have tried to intentionally deal out the federal government to keep it at the state level, to keep it fractured, to keep us broken. The only way that we will be able to overcome this and end it is a constitutional amendment. I have a draft, which is actually very long, of a constitutional amendment for universal health care, and it should be included in that. Yes, we need a constitutional amendment, or we're going to be fighting over this forever. And Roe v. Wade, I think, should be restored, but the way they did it, it's going to be very hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. So I do believe we have to be wrapping up, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to make closing statements, and I will give you up to 90 seconds. And because we started with Mr. Taylor, I'm going to start closing statements with Mr. Roark. Mr. Roark, 90 seconds to you, sir.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks, DSA, for giving me an opportunity to speak here this evening. I appreciate the time. I just wanted to say, you know, I'm a former UAW assembly line worker, put myself through college with little or no help. I went in the Navy, spent 11 years in the Navy. And the reason why I say those things is I believe I bring to the race crossover appeal, right? Those independent, those disenfranchised Republicans who we desperately need to win. Because remember, this is about winning. If we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to lose. It's that simple. And I really believe we kind of have to change things a little. I know my colleagues disagree with my approach a little, but that's kind of the reality. We need 25 to 30% of the independents and Republicans to either not vote or vote for us. And I truly believe that's the path forward. And I just wanted to say, I appreciate your time, appreciate the opportunity to have this debate tonight. Please look me up on https://keilroark.com. And also, please remember to vote. May 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roark. Dr. Peck, closing statements from you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Scott. This has been great. We have 7 more on the books, 6 more on the books, and we'll probably have more put on there, and there'll be a lot more discussion. I really encourage everybody to tune in if you can't be there for it, to get the full breadth of what all of these candidates have to say about the issues. I hope I earned your trust tonight. That's what's most important to me. And I hope that trust turns into a vote. I hope that you saw that tonight I not only progressive, not only am someone who wants to make progress, but I'm a realist in that these ideas that we are fighting for have solutions for today. And sometimes those solutions are smaller because we need to run and hit and do what we can during this next 2-year cycle so that we can make the bigger changes. And if we get to the point where we can make the bigger changes, great. I think my colleague, Brad, to my left, has said things like we need to make education free, we need to pass constitutional amendments. But today's solution, I hope in the next 6 sessions, that we'll get more down to talking about what we do today. And I hope that I gave you a flavor of that as well. Thank you all for your trust. And please vote May 5th, but also in November. We need a big turnout for Democrats. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Mr. Meyer, closing statements from you. You've got 90 seconds.
So I'd like to thank everybody again for being here. The first thing that I did publicly was a couple of universal health care forums because that was important. It wasn't meet and greets and it wasn't fundraising. And then the next thing I did was an ICE protest at Camp Atterbury last August that had about 550 people there because I am more activist and we need to stand up and speak out. You know, I've been listening a lot to the app and there's a couple things that came to mind. I don't have any strong feelings, frankly, about the legalization of cannabis. And I decided that I would leave it up to the people of the district. And it's popular and I'm for I'm for legalization of cannabis. But we do need to be careful that, you know, it was popular opinion in California that actually destroyed their education system or undercut their education system. And it was popular opinion in Germany that led to the Nazis. So we need to have leaders that have responsibility and some sense of what they want to do. I know we need crossover, but, you know, I am a practical problem-solving person. This is what I'm about, is solving problems. Okay, and I know that there is short term, but if we don't start with where we want, sorry, that's yours, where we want to be, we're never going to get there. We have to we have to screw our courage to the sticking place and say, this is where we're going, and this session, we're going to try to get this piece of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Taylor, final word goes to you tonight, sir.
Well, I want to thank all of you for having me here. It will be me and one of these three against Aaron on your November election. I will not be in the primary. I need 4,500 signatures to get on the ballot. My petitions are back there. You can visit my website at floyd2026.com. I've got a demo of the Congress app. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thanks again to all of our candidates tonight. Thank all of you for being here, and thank you for your questions. Thanks to First United for the facility, and thanks to the entire DSA team. You guys have done a great job putting this thing together 2 weeks in a row. So hats off to everybody here in this room. Right. Our sound and audio and video team here has been phenomenal work. So thank you guys so much. Again, thanks everybody tonight. Be safe. Get the